Over the next few hours, John told them things that even watching every horror and sci-fi movie in existence, it couldn't have prepared them for it in the slightest. He spoke of how the world once used to be 3 times as large and that all creatures existed in this one world once upon a time, until the children of the Creator, or God, rebelled against him. His most beautiful and brightest son, Lucifer, the morning star, tried not only to take over heaven and earth, but to become the Creator himself, or a better version of him according to Lucifer. Upon making it to heavens, the third circle, the Creator summoned the remaining archangels which stood for, and bestowed upon them great power. Power not only of heaven, but of earth as well. Accepting their new positions, God made them reside over both a directional access point of earth, such as north, south, east, and west, but also the 4 elements as well, along with great strength, unrivaled speed, physic power, and the very essence of the light of the Creator. Since they now held a sway over the earth and its elements, there could now exist no spell or magical ruin of heaven or earth that could hold power over them, and hell ruins were not that effective against angels to begin with, therefore virtually useless against the 4 arcs. Now endowed with this great new power, led by Michael and his new flaming sword of the element fire, he led his brothers Gabriel, Raphael, and sister Uriel to face Lucifer and 1/3 of all of their brethren who followed the morning star. In the end, Lucifer fell to this awesome new power and was cast out of heaven. The Creator wouldn't allow him to fall to earth and destroy his newest and most prized creation, humanity. To save us this immediate fate, and make Lucifer remember what he chose to give up, God created hell, a dark polar opposite mirror of heaven itself. That's why hell has 7 circles, because heaven does. It's the perfect antithetical reflection of the golden and white city of Heaven Prime, except it's black and red, an obsidian corruption of Lucifer's once beloved home. After this, Lucifer called upon all the feral predators of earth and the creatures of the night to do his bidding, in exchange for great and horrific new power. The creatures outside pacing around this house as we speak are a creation of that dark and unholy pact, said John, stopping for a moment while the 2 men took this all in. Hundreds more abominations were born into this world and the Dark Ages began. In an attempt to right this wrong, each archangel sought out one worthy human to transfer a small amount of their power to, and thus the Arch families came to be. Evil was paying close attention, however, and so repeated this process for themselves. These 7 primes, or the princes of hell, sought out 7 dark and strong humans and succeeded in mirroring the Arch families, just as hell was made to mirror heaven. Evil knew not the family's immediate intention though, and that would probably prove to be their downfall. Holding power over the Earth's elements and positional access points, a great veil was put up to separate 2/3 of the world from the other 1/3, cutting off the bulk of humanity from the nightmares of hell, or any magic whatsoever, as to ensure that nobody had the power to conduct any summoning rituals that could break the veil, or bring these nightmare creatures into this new, safe world. The creatures who took pacts with Lucifer were offered a truce if they would help protect the veil, and humanity from those who serve hell or any other potential threats. The creatures outside and many others refused this truce, so 1/3 of the larger side of the veil houses them and keeps them from affecting human life. Specifically, the monsters outside came to be during the Dark Ages, when 4 great and noble warriors, after a particularly nasty battle, became lost and stranded in the woods, on the brink of starvation and desperately avoiding being caught by their enemies, while 3 of the men were using magic to summon help, as the 4th kept watch. One of the princes of hell, Beelzebub, who presides over the deadly sin of gluttony and rot itself, came to the fourth man and offered him godlike power if he was to kill and eat the flesh of his brother. While what Beelzebub truly said and showed him is to this day among debate, whatever was proposed, the warrior named Lo took the Dark Lord's deal and became the first of his kind. The more evil tips the balance of power and the more the veil begins to tear in places. It's my job, said John as a veil guardian, to protect the veil and the balance, or at least the light side of it. It's because of these micro rips within the veil that creatures like the ones you encountered are able to get through. The Ark families have blended their houses and bloodlines over the centuries in an attempt to create one leader, one who possesses power from all four angels. 32 years ago, this was accomplished, and I have served and protected Arella since the day she was born, guarding both her and her veil. If the ancient Lokurai, or Wendigo as the Native Americans had named them, breached that locked metal door you saw, Wade, they may just bring down the veil far enough to usher an army through and begin the first steps of what you call Armageddon, Ragnarok, or the Apocalypse, for they are just different names for the same event, and it can never be allowed to happen. John continued as the two men listened eagerly. He spoke of many things, of how the giants were only a sub-Nephilian species and how a true Nephilim prime was a union between a full-fledged angel and a pure-blood demon or devil, and how the first of them was born when Adam's first wife, Lilith, was cast out of Eden, becoming the very first demon. At the time, Lucifer had just begun his war on heaven, and during a break in the battle, Lucifer's right hand and most powerful angel next to him, Samuel, saw Lilith's exile and rebirth from the ruined first circle of heaven. The angel Samuel flew down to her, and upon seeing this new creation, was overcome with a remarkable epiphany. John paused for a moment. Now, boys, you must understand one of the main driving points that Lucifer used to fuel his rebellion. It was us. You see, the angels had amazing and great power, but had no choice but to serve in the light to sustain their power and grace. Humans, however, well, what humans have the potential to become through God's plan at least have no such limitations. In fact, once a soul completes its intended journey and chooses the light over the darkness and all its forbidden pleasures, it becomes nothing short of a fledgling god itself. They would be able to cross into heaven, hell, and almost everything in between, to bring justice straight to the heart of hell, where angels cannot tread. They can just choose to join the darkness and just say screw it all, or go forge their own destiny in another world. As long as they don't threaten the light, heaven, or God's plan and creatures directly, then they are left to their own devices. Samuel thought to cheat this process and create a being that could be without limitations of divide or dark borders and be given great power, without earning it through trials and tribulations as mortals must do. This is a very, very important reason God makes souls go through the trial of mortality, interjected John, for without the wisdom and experience of defeating your own personal demons, trials, and making choices in which you must answer for, you're just a spoiled child who cannot process rejection or consequence, and then given a loaded gun that never runs out of bullets. Most of the Nephilim became the worst beings in all existence, save for about 10% of them, who became the light counterpart to their dark majority, and some of the best and most noble people to ever draw breath, and your legends. Wade and Daniel both stared at John quizzically upon him saying this. Haven't you ever heard of Hercules, Thor, or even Achilles, who was merely an offspring of a Nephilian prime? John also spoke of how during World War II, the Nazis, using science and dark magic, ran experiments on how to fuse high-ranking and capable Gestapo officers with the princes of hell. This was in order to usher in the royalty of hell onto Earth. How Lucifer himself was set to fuse with a high-ranking officer, but vanished the day before, leaving his spire in hell in crumbling ruins. How he was locked in the deepest part of hell, and could only leave his spire in a spiritual form, and how the experiment would not only have freed his physical body from his dark palace-like prison, but would have given him a body on earth as well. Everything that he had desperately wanted since he had fell from heaven. Not one soul in heaven, earth, or even among the denizens of hell have any clue where he is. Meanwhile in hell, upon an absent king and a portal leading to ultimate power and freedom, his right hand grabbed onto that opening, and Samuel was reborn onto the earth, simultaneously becoming the new undisputed ruler of hell. Well, there was dispute, but after Samuel defeated Asmodeus, Apollyon, and Azazel in combat, they had no choice but to bow to him. He wasn't Lucifer's right hand for nothing after all, and he possesses unrivaled power on both hell and earth now. "Wait, so you're telling me," interjected Wade, "that Satan isn't Satan anymore?" "First off," answered John, "the word Satan just means adversary, and no, Lucifer is not our adversary any longer. All anyone knows for sure," John continued, seeing the confusion building on their faces, "is what God said, or more accurately, what God told the angels and they told Arella. When the Arcs approached God about this matter, he told them, Lucifer is no longer a threat to heaven. He is to be completely left alone, for he has begun a different journey now, and has much to atone for, and upon doing so will find his true self, the true reason that I created him, and why everything had to happen as it did." When the Arcs brought up all of his evil deeds, they were silenced, and God conveyed one last truth. "Sometimes, my children, what appears to be evil is truly just the absence of love. Lucifer thought that when I created humanity that I abandoned my love for him. However, nothing could have been further from the truth. The day before I lost my brightest star for good, I broke through heaven, earth, hell, and reality itself, and showed him the love that human and angel united could bring into the world one day. My apex master plan, true and unparalleled. Love. There is nothing more powerful in the whole of existence, even myself, or I would have brought it into being by now. It's the most powerful energy source in any and all of the worlds, dimensions, and universes, and it has never existed in its truest form, has never manifested into the universe yet. This love exists within me, but it's my very core and cannot simply be given, for it is my very existence, and no other being could contain it within themselves through me, not without being torn apart on every level. Their very soul would be eradicated by the power. This can only be brought in creation by a very special union of human and angel. I created humanity not just for me, my children, but for you, for each other. Upon bestowing Lucifer with this knowledge and its specifics, it awoke him, and in doing so enlightened himself to his true destiny, and how this was a gift that affected everyone directly, even him. After I had placed this knowledge into his heart, I tore down his prison and gave him a choice, as much free will as any human or Nephilium could have. At that moment, the portal to Earth and the awaiting vessel opened. So from the ruins of his prison I raised a tree of life, and instructed him to go through whatever doorway he had wished. But then only my door, which opened at the base of the tree, will lead you to the destiny that I just revealed to you. The rest, John said, is history. Wait, said Daniel in a shocked yet slightly amused tone. So we only live in 1/3 of the entire real world. All monsters are real, magic exists, and the Bible has been severely redacted. And the devil quit being the devil, and he's just out there finding himself? Before anyone could answer, Daniel put his fist to his head and pulled them away, while opening his hands wide as possible, indicating that his mind had been quite literally blown. John continued on. He spoke of how vampires were once a choir of angels and it was their job to deliver God's wrath, and how almost their entire choir followed Lucifer save for one, and how he, Azrael, because of his loyalties, was ascended by God to the status of the Angel of Death, and would sometimes choose souls bound for hell, snatching them from their descent if they still showed potential, in order to make them reapers and give them a second chance at redemption, by helping lost souls and escorting them to their intended destination, hopefully changing their hearts and souls in the process. John said how 3 versions of vampires now exist: the original choir, who are more or less just a type of fallen angel; their offspring, who have many Nephilim-like powers, but not quite as raw power as their parents. And when these offspring sleep with a human, you get the vampires that you see on most television and movies: enhanced killers who require lifeblood and time to grow in power, but more or less end up being superhuman-like beings who occasionally are born or evolve into having more supernatural and active powers. He spoke of how once the veil was put up, the Lycans truly stepped up and helped the light perhaps more than any other creatures. How veil guardians like himself worked closely with Lycans to protect the boundaries set up by the veil, and how some of his very best and most trusted friends were Lycans. They are truly a loyal and noble race, John said to himself, smiling. Well, most of them. He spoke of how after they chose to aid the Ark families in the light, the god had blessed their species, and because of that blessing, about 1 in every 1,000 or so Lycans birthed, a great white wolf would be born. Not only bigger, faster, stronger, and smarter, but with an extra supernatural power as well, that would vary greatly among each one born. John said that he had fought beside one of these great beings before, and this particular Ark wolf, a Wahila, as the Native Americans had named it, had deep purple eyes and the ability to use telekinesis, making him one heck of a force to be reckoned with. He saved my life, actually, from the creature that did this. He held up his hand and then turned his head around to show his deep-set scars. The same monster that awaits outside for us right now. The Dark One, their leader, asked Wade. Yes, said John in a contemptuous manner. Its name is Lokren, a general and blood descendant of Lo himself. He answers only to Lo and Lord Samuel personally, unless ordered to follow an ancient Lokery, which is what Lo is, but even though he was the first and by far the most powerful, he is not the only ancient one. The first 7 Lokery he created became his princes, the same way Lucifer's 7 were his. These numbers are not coincidences, and every Lokery created after that was less than the original, the ancients. Now, stated John, stand on up, boys. As the 2 men followed John's orders, the table that we were seated at retracted into the floor, revealing a stairway leading down to an apparent sub-level of the mansion. After the men had descended the staircase, they found themselves in an extremely wide open and high-ceilinged metal room with different staging areas. They saw a firing range, sparring area, and then more unbelievable areas labeled such as MAC testing chamber, energy vacuum chamber, and much more. An even bigger flat screen came to life on the furthest side of the room as John began to speak. We only have about 4 hours until nightfall, but lucky for us though, this room has a magical delay that can be activated for emergency scenarios. The delay is a one-time only use though, and to reconfigure another would take at least a week, time we simply do not have. So we're going to have to make every second count. The delay will pause time for exactly 3 hours on this mountain, giving us a total of 7 hours of training time. And don't worry about depleting your energy. After everything, mana will be presented to you, a divine fruit that grows only on trees of life and will replenish every aspect of your being, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Now, there is a specific attack that Lokery can perform in which you need to be made aware of. If you ever see them crouch low and stay that way, you need to rather interrupt that process or get the heck out of the way. Like a grasshopper, they compress their muscles as low as possible for one big move. As their muscles compress, so does the entirety of their energy and dark power, allowing them to move in one straight line with incredible speed. Wade had flashbacks of the creatures attacking Daniel's boss, and it all began to make sense. So they can't actually teleport. Wade thought to himself, making more sense of the attack and the subsequent murder of the electrician. However, continued John, it's not much use in a face-to-face fight, because it takes them about 10 to 15 seconds to charge it up, and a skilled warrior or other formidable creature can anticipate it rather easily. This trick does make them the #1 ambushing predator, and it should not be taken lightly. John instructed them to retrieve a variety of weapons and items from upstairs in order to familiarize themselves with their purpose, and how and when to use them. When the men returned, they were greeted with a new face though. A beautiful yet intense-looking woman was now staring back at them through the screen. John has his part to play in this coming battle, and has left to do so. My name is Rose and I'll be training you. John will return here tonight to aid you in battle, and I have to try and teach you enough to not only survive but to be victorious. Listen to me very carefully, you two, said Rose with complete seriousness in her voice. With these special weapons and armor this place has at its disposal, not to mention the magical and holy relics, your victory is not only possible but probable. If you do everything I say with complete dedication, then we will tear those gross idiots apart. They're counting on John being cut off from this mansion and its contents, on outnumbering and overpowering us. Little do they know that I'm about to create 2 instruments of unstoppable death. For with my knowledge in the weapons and relics here, I'm going to forge the 2 of you into an unfathomable perfect storm of pure annihilation. Plus, added Rose cheerfully, we have some friends in the area that are already en route to you. So if those spiky idiots want to battle, they're about to bite off more than they can even chew. Now bring everything down here quickly. But we just brought down everything John said. Wade started before being silenced by Rose. Everything, I said. Go, go, shouted Rose with the confident intensity of a drill sergeant. Man, they should put her in charge of all the pep talks, said Daniel, smiling, as the 2 men set out to retrieve the mansion's hidden treasures and begin their transformation. Wade and Daniel sat outside of the mansion's first-floor balcony, watching the sun as it was moments away from beginning its descent beyond the mountains, and reluctantly but calmly waited for its lunar counterpart that would precede their inevitable fate. In their hearts, they knew only one truth to be absolute, that the 2 men that arrived on this mountain were no longer these same 2 men who sat on the porch watching the sunset. If they managed to survive this night, nothing would ever be the same, thought Wade. How could he just go back to fixing roofs and pretend that he is not utterly and completely changed? That although still afraid, his life had more purpose in the past 11 hours than his entire 49 years of life before. No, he could never go back to just being Wade, the roof repairman. In fact, he wasn't even sure if that person existed anymore. Not after everything he had been told. And most definitely not after all the special training they just went through with Rose, using weapons and items that were beyond his wildest imagination. Judging by the smile on Daniel's face and the faraway content look in his eye, Wade assumed he felt the same way about the situation. Well, at least the mana worked, said Daniel. I feel like I just woke up from the best night of sleep ever, but without any residual grogginess, hunger, or anything. Like being perfectly balanced. Yup, replied Wade shortly. What's up? Asked Daniel. Something on your mind? I mean, beside having to face a pack of demonic giant monsters, Daniel said in jest while nudging him with his shoulder and smiling. That's just it, responded Wade. I should be more terrified. It's like life or death and no longer carry the same intense impact that they once held. That no matter what outcome we encounter this night, I feel content, Like this is my destiny. And for the first time ever, I feel as I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Instead of desperately trying to chase money or material things that are supposed to give my life meaning, but never seem to do. I feel, to put it simply, like everything one way or the other is going to be okay. Yeah, me too, said Daniel, smiling and placing his hand on Wade's shoulder. Me too, came a demonically wretched voice from the left corner of the balcony, which was easily over 12 feet off the ground, making the creature's head just visible from the base of its neck as it peered at them over the high porch railing. Lochran, said Wade in a contemptuous tone, as the creature grinned at him, displaying sharp, unnaturally long teeth that had just the slightest bit of saliva running down them, no doubt from eagerly wanting to consume Wade on the spot. I see you're familiar with me now. No doubt much more, I dare say, spoke the creature in a wholly sophisticated and disturbing new tone. Its voice now sounded so proper and intelligent that for a moment Wade almost mistook it for a British accent due to the severity of its perfect grammar and tone, not unlike an English major or an Ivy League college professor. Up close in the fading light, Wade noticed that they actually did have eyes. Where he once thought to be vacant black craters in their head were actually two round spheres of voided out black that carried not a single reflection of light from the dwindling sun, like they absorbed any light whatsoever. Well, gentlemen, seeing as how you have obtained my name, from John no doubt, it is only fitting that I am giving yours. I can see the young one is named Daniel. Hello, Daniel. Terribly sorry about killing your friend. Rather unfortunate. My name is Wade, he said to the creature, while rising up to face him. Derived from the pre-7th century Old English verb waden, meaning, ironically enough, to go. The one thing that you cannot do, said the creature while laughing. Or can you? What are you getting at? Asked Wade impatiently. I'm going to level with you boys, said Lochran seriously. I just need what's inside that locked room. Why don't you just take all the other goodies, weapons and all, and just leave? This isn't your battle. Go and enjoy your lives instead of foolishly throwing them away. Like you would just let us leave, said Wade accusingly. We would just end up dinner. Not true, sir, answered Lochran, almost offended. I assure you my word means something. Plus, you have enough high-tech armor and weapons, not to mention magical relics, to make a rather easy escape. And you know it, sir. If we let you take the mountain, then how long until you start marching armies across the Vale and into the rest of the world? Our world. My answer is no. Mine too, said Daniel, rising up in order to stand beside Wade defiantly. Let me explain this in another way, said Lochran, with just a touch of his voice's demonic edge coming back with that statement, before returning fully to its proper state. John's lieutenant has betrayed him in exchange for a position of power. He helped us usher in an ancient Lokari with a retainer of 50 soldiers who will arrive within the hour. You have not one hope, even with that small pack of lichens that I can smell moving this way now. Lochran began laughing again, sounding more like a demonically possessed manic human than the yipping howls of chaos that Wade heard from the others. Where is your glorious creator now? Said Lochran while still laughing maniacally. Rhetorical question, boys, Lochran said, trying to calm his amusement. No need to answer. Cutting off their conversation like a comical foghorn, the rhythm to the old shave and a haircut beat issued overwhelmingly loud enough through an approaching car horn. The car honked again as Wade and Daniel looked at each other in panicked confusion, as Lochran turned his massive head towards the sound quickly, his antlers accidentally ripping up part of the deck as easily as someone tearing apart wet cardboard as he did so. It sounds like another snack has arrived. For being so very far away, I must say the delivery service is impeccable. said Lochran mockingly. "I'll have to be sure and tip this time. Excuse me, gentlemen," said the creature as it nodded to them in a mock departure and began moving towards the noise. The two men rushed inside quickly and made their way to the kitchen window by the front door in order to inspect the situation. Wade assumed at best that it would be John's Range Rover pulling in with a backup and a plan, and at worst it would be an unknown maintenance or construction worker, unknowingly coming to meet another bloody and unsavory end. However, what the two men gazed upon just didn't make any sense. Pulling into the front gate just as the men reached the kitchen window was a Hummer. And this Hummer was not at all military though. In fact, it was about as far away from any form of professionalism as a vehicle could get. It was an H2 model of Hummer for starters, completely covered in purple and green two-tone chameleon paint that seemed to reflect even more changing colors as your eyes moved around it. The windows were so tinted that not one figure could visibly be made out, and on top of all of this, the gate seemed to open for them without anyone getting out to punch in any form of code. Wade knew that John had a remote for doing just this, and his heart began to lighten a bit, thinking that backup had indeed finally arrived. What happened in reality though, Wade and Daniel could have never been prepared for, even after being initiated to the revelations of the universe by John, and some of their applications by Rose. The patience and ambushing tactics displayed by the creatures previously had seemingly been abandoned and replaced by a more direct approach, with Lochran standing directly in front of the mansion's entrance, with his lackey at his side. As the vehicle crossed the gated entrance, Lochran nodded once, signaling the other creature to attack. It charged forward on all fours, letting out an ungodly roar as it thundered towards the shiny Hummer with incredible power and speed. When its antlers were about 5 feet away from impact, strange unfamiliar ruins materialized around the vehicle that encircled what appeared to be a pentagram in the same glowing fire-colored energy that exploded in the monster's face, throwing the subordinate creature back at least 100 feet, as a noise like thunder was both heard and felt by the two men inside. Upon closer inspection of the scene unfolding outside, Wade noticed that indeed these ruins were different than the mansion's defenses, both glowing like fire and cinder, and having completely different shaped symbols altogether. As the creature was launched back, it took at least 2 large trees with it, subsequently covering it in large heavy debris, trapping it for a few moments before it regained consciousness and began writhing around frantically like a trapped animal. Wade noticed that it had also been singed by the fiery ruins and saw little bits of flame still dancing around its charred fur as it flailed violently to put them out and escape its wooden prison. After about 7 seconds of chaotically writhing around, the creature was able to get back up and grab the largest hardwood tree, pinning it down, and performing a rudimentary bench press of at least 15,000 pounds. And due to the tree being oak and extremely dense and heavy, it threw the tree off itself as easily as a human man could throw about 40 pounds off himself, making Wade have to rethink how dangerous these monsters really were. Rising up in a torrent of enraged fury, the wounded creature stood up, breathing heavy in a combination of both rage and mild exhaustion. At this time, the Humvee's passenger side door opened up and a man casually stepped out. The man was, well, there was no other way to say, thought Wade. He was beautiful. He looked like what models probably spend their whole youth trying to appear as if a scientist had made a mold of the perfect male specimen and brought it to life. He was shockingly handsome, but not at all feminine, seeming to be well built, but in a lean and cut sort of way. Although his eyes were sky blue now, Wade knew he saw them light up in a yellowish gold contrast for the briefest of moment when he had first stepped out of the flashy yet unorthodox vehicle. His hair was a mix between a golden and platinum blonde, starting platinum at its roots and perfectly fading into a golden, almost shining yellow at its tips. The sides were faded short, with just enough hair being left in the top of his head to have a neat side part running down its length. That ended in the front with a swoosh-like effect to the left, being brushed straight up with a slight wave to the side. What caught Wade off guard the most, though, was Loughran's reaction to the man. As the handsome man had opened the passenger side door, Loughran opened his mouth, no doubt to say something ominously clever, thought Wade. But they both stopped his advance and shut his mouth quickly upon the man, briefly flashing his golden yellow eyes. As the handsome man and Loughran stood staring at one another, the rabid and angry stunned creature made it to its feet and let out a crazed battle cry before charging at the man in a frenetic frenzy of hate and rage. "No!" screamed Loughran in his original demonic voice again, but the creature, now taking its third painful discharge of protective energy through the mansion, and now the mysterious vehicle within 24 hours, had reached its limit, and had no desire for anything other than to inflict vengeful destruction upon its attacker. The man squinted his eyes and pursed his lips, in apparent annoyance at the charging behemoth monster before calmly saying, "Bad dog," and holding an open palm outstretched in the air, making the creature instantly lift off the ground about 30 feet by some invisible force. The hovering monstrosity tried flailing around to free itself, but its movements were slowed and sluggish, as if it was trying to move in water, instead of the air it visibly floated in. Loughran remained silent and frozen in place, making no attempt to save his comrade, rather physically or verbally. Instead, the stationary Loughran put his hands behind his back casually, like he was waiting patiently, and subtly began rubbing its thumb claw and index finger claw in a circular motion until dark black, almost energy-like shadow began coalescing around his claws. The beast repeated this process until, seemingly out of nowhere, a dark blue glowing sphere had appeared, which the creature quickly grabbed with its claw tips and let fall into his open palm. The handsome man, who stood with his arms still outstretched, closed his open palm into a fist which made the hovering monster compress into a tight ball, completely vanishing it. Not one drop of the creature spilled from its invisible coffin until the handsome man opened his fist again, where the entirety of the creature's remains hit the ground with an awful wet smacking sound. Loughran, who stood poised with his hand still behind his back, closed his hand shut over the dark blue glowing stone and disappeared. In fact, though, upon quickly surveying the scene, Wade noticed that Loughran had actually reappeared behind the handsome man, with his oversized claws raised high for the kill. Wade thought for sure that the ace Loughran had just pulled out of his sleeve had given him the advantage, and that any second Wade would witness the handsome man's head explode, and just like the former electrician. Loughran swung hard down and was met with an explosion of dirt, as his claws met nothing but air in the ground. Mimicking the monster's own failed action, Wade noticed the man was indeed standing behind Loughran now. As the creature freed its large claws from the earth, the handsome man threw a straight hard punch with the ease skill of a master martial artist. Upon his fist impacting the creature's back, Loughran was launched forward with his chest stuck out, and his limbs dangling limply behind, making him appear as if he was struck in the rear by a speeding locomotive. Loughran landed on the mansion's front wall, activating the protective barrier, which blasted him back the way that he had just come, rocketing him directly towards the handsome man again, as he swiftly backhanded the incoming creature, sending him flying into the woods and tearing through trees and foliage. Loughran remained still, under a pile of debris with tiny light blue flames scattered across the immediate area from the house's protective barrier. The handsome man walked back to his vehicle. Opening the passenger side door, he reached in, and when he came back out, he was holding a long rectangular black box, and he began walking directly towards the front door. He stopped on the front door's landing, and he knocked.